Welcome back to the Get Mellow podcast. I'm Megan, a life coach helping people break negative cycles and build a life that feels good to love. This is your weekly space to slow down, reflect, and find simple insights that create real change. Let's get into it. Welcome back to episode 8. 8 full weeks of the podcast. It's hard to believe. And I just want to say a massive thank you for listening to last week's episodes, or one of the episodes so far, and coming back to listen to this one. I'm always going to come on here and say thanks because I'm feeling very grateful that I'm able to host this and share my thoughts, learnings and experiences with you. Hopefully you can take some benefit from it and it impacts your day positively. I wanted to start this podcast for so long and I didn't because of the fear of negative things people would say. But I'm so glad I did because I feel like each week it's improving and I'm enjoying sitting down to create it every Wednesday. Before I dive into this week's episode, I just want to quickly mention 2 ways that you can work with me more closely. The first one is one-on-one coaching. So I open up a limited number of spots on a rolling basis. So if you've been thinking about working with me directly, now would be a great time to apply. You can find the application link in the episode description. And the second one is mellow meditations. So something I like to call the gym membership for your mind. Just like we go to the gym to build stronger muscles, meditation builds a stronger mind. I host mellow meditations live on Zoom every single weekday. And if you can't make it live, the recording is always available for you to watch back. It's been running since January 5th and I'd love for you to be a part of it. The sign up link is also in the episode description. If you've got any issues with the link, please feel free to reach out to me by email or on one of my social medias, wherever it is that you have me. But let's get into this week. So we have part 2 of the Atomic Habits book. And if you missed last week, I would say go back and listen to it because it's part 1 and it's the first half of the book. What I've done is reread Atomic Habits again, took notes and created the podcast from that. I really believe that if you are currently stuck in bad habits and you can't seem to get out of them, reading a book can feel like a mountain to climb. So I wanted to take that off you and deliver a short, bite-sized podcast that you can literally take things from today and start implementing. And feel free to go and grab a pen and a piece of paper now. Pause the podcast if you feel like taking your own notes, because if you're anything like me, I need to take notes on everything. I have to read something, take notes, reread the notes, and then hopefully it goes in. Sometimes it still doesn't. But I'm not going to do a recap of last week. I'm just going to move on to the second half of the book. So please do go back and listen if you want to catch up. James moves on from the first and second law to the third law, which is make it easy. So when preparation becomes a form of procrastination, you need to change something. You don't want to be merely planning. You want to be practicing taking action. This part really helped me because for so long I would think about making content because I knew I needed to make content to grow my business. I would plan it, second guess it, doubt myself, and then I just wouldn't post it. But because I took action back in December and set myself a challenge to post every single weekday, which has now increased to every single day, the time between thinking and doing is so much quicker and things feel so much easier. Now, that's not to say that I enjoy doing a video every day, but it feels easier because I've got the reps in and because I've just made it a habit and part of my working day. He says that if you want to master a habit, the key is to start with repetition, not perfection. So I don't think I'll ever be perfect at writing, coaching, creating meditations, podcasts or anything, but I know that I'll improve by repeating it over and over again. He then moves on to speak about how long it actually takes to form a new habit. Each time you repeat an action, you're activating a particular neural circuit associated with that habit. So this means that simply putting in your reps is one of the most critical steps you can take to encode a new habit. Habits form based on frequency, not time. So people should really be asking how many repetitions are required to make a habit automatic. Your current habits have been internalized over the course of hundreds, if not thousands, of repetitions. New habits require the same level of frequency, which requires a lot of patience. I spoke about this recently when I talked about not looking at your phone for the first hour of the day. Let's say you're 26, you got a phone when you were 16, probably younger, but let's give it as an example. You've spent the last 10 years waking up, grabbing for your phone and looking at it first thing in the morning. That's 3,650 days of doing the same habit over and over again. So when you think about breaking it, it's not going to be easy, but it is possible. You just have to continue to get the reps in and always start small. So don't start with not looking at it for the first hour. Start with 5 minutes and then build from there and continue to build. He then speaks about the law of least effort, which states that when deciding between two similar options, people will naturally gravitate towards the option that requires the least amount of work. We are motivated to do what is easy. You've probably heard it loads of times, people saying that doing hard things will make your life easy and doing easy things will make your life hard. Every habit can be seen as an obstacle to getting what you want. Dieting is an obstacle to getting fit. Meditation is an obstacle to feeling calmer. Journaling is an obstacle to thinking more clearly. We must create an environment where doing the right thing is as easy as possible. For example, leaving your phone outside the room will reduce the likelihood of you grabbing for it first thing in the morning to start scrolling. And he moves on then to how to stop procrastinating by using the 2-minute rule. So researchers estimate that 40 to 50% of our actions on any given day are done out of habit. Habits are like the entrance ramp to the motorway. They lead you down a path and before you know it, you're speeding towards the next behaviour. It seems easier to continue what you're already doing than to start doing something different. But the 2-minute rule states that when you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do. So for example, reading before bed becomes reading 1 page. Doing 30 minutes of yoga becomes rolling out your yoga mat. Running 3 miles becomes tying on your running shoes and getting ready. Mastering the art of showing up and those first 2 minutes simply become a ritual at the beginning of a larger routine. So I meditate for at least 30 minutes every single day, but some days I just can't seem to find the time. Maybe that's an excuse for me some days, but that's fine. But when I can't find the time, I ask myself, can I do 5 minutes? Sometimes we think doing something really small doesn't make a difference, but it's those small moments where you still show up that contribute to you being able to continue to show up and increase the number of times that you're showing up for yourself and doing the habit. So he's got an example of habit shaping. Let's take becoming an early riser, for example. So phase 1 is be home by 10 p.m. every night. Phase 2, have all devices turned off by 10 p.m. every night. Phase 3, be in bed by 10 p.m. every night, reading a book or talking with your partner. Phase 4, lights off by 10 p.m. every night. And then phase 5, wake up at 6 a.m. every day. And as I read this, I feel like everybody is completely different. So I think you can spend a certain amount of time on phase 1. So maybe like for a week, you just lock in being at home and in your bed at 10 o'clock every night. And you just do that for a week. Maybe you don't get up early. You're not moved to phase 2 yet with having all your devices turned off. Maybe after a week, you move on to phase 2. And then another week, you're moving into phase 3 and so on. Or maybe you're the kind of person that just wants to try all five phases right away. I want you to pause this podcast now and see if you can break down a habit that you're trying to introduce into those 5 phases. Welcome back if you did pause the podcast, and if you didn't, hopefully you'll take note of it somewhere else. But James then moves on to talking about how to make good habits inevitable and bad habits impossible. Sometimes success is less about making good habits easy and more about making bad habits hard. So a few one-time actions, they lead to better long-term habits. Like let's take for nutrition, for example, using smaller plates to reduce calorie intake. Seems easy. For sleep, getting blackout curtains, removing the TV from your bedroom. For productivity, turning off notifications on your phone or muting group chats. Keeping your phone on silent and removing social media apps or games from your phone while you're trying to get work done. Technology creates a level of convenience that enables us to act on our smallest whims and desires. So at the slightest sign of hunger, you can have food delivered to your door, depending on where you're living. At the slightest hint of boredom, you can get lost in the vast expanse of social media. So in summary, the third law for make it easy is reduce friction, decrease the number of steps between you and your good habits, prime your environment, prepare your environment to make future actions easier, master the decisive moment, optimize the small choices that deliver outsized impact, use the 2-minute rule, downscale your habits until they can be done in 2 minutes or less, and automate your habits, invest in technology to lock in future behaviour. He then moves on to the fourth law, which is make it satisfying. We are more likely to repeat a behaviour when the experience is satisfying. Take the story of chewing gum. So chewing gum had been sold commercially throughout the 1800s, but it wasn't until Wrigley launched in 1891 that it became a worldwide habit. Early versions were made from relatively bland resins. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. Chewy but not tasty. Then they went a step further and began pushing chewing gum as a pathway to a clean mouth. Advertisements told readers to refresh your taste. Just to recap a wee bit, the first 3 laws of behaviour change are: number 1, make it obvious; number 2, make it attractive; number 3, make it easy; and the fourth law is to make it satisfying, which increases the odds that the behaviour will be repeated next time and completes the habit loop. With bad habits, the immediate outcome usually feels good, but the ultimate outcome feels bad. With good habits, it's the reverse. The immediate outcome is unenjoyable, but the ultimate outcome feels good. So the brain's tendency to prioritise the present moment means you can't rely on good intentions. It is possible to train yourself to delay gratification, but you need to work with the grain of human nature, not against it. The best way to do this is to add a wee bit of immediate pressure to the habits that pay off in the long run. A bit of immediate pain to the ones that don't. So I did this without even thinking last night, which is funny now that I'm reading this for today's episode. I did not want to go to the gym, but thankfully Sarah says, get up, we're fucking going to the gym. And I noticed that there was sausages, bacon and pancakes that I could make after coming home from the gym. And as soon as I thought about that reward after going, I walked out the door and I thought, let's get this workout done. Not the best post-workout fuel, but it got me to the gym and it felt good going after a long, busy day yesterday. An example he also gives here is that you want to challenge yourself to not drink alcohol this month, but nothing happens when you don't have a drink. So there's no reward. All you're doing is resisting temptation and there's not anything else satisfying after that. So one solution is to turn the situation on its head and make the avoidance visible. Open a savings account. So every time you refrain from buying a carry-out, add the money to the savings account and watch it increase. You're making it satisfying to do nothing. So eventually then intrinsic rewards like a better mood, more energy, reduced stress will kick in and you'll become less concerned with chasing the secondary reward of watching the money increase in your savings account. Sticking with good habits every day. There's a good technique he mentioned in the book from a banker in Canada where he had to make a number of phone calls in one day. He needed to make 120 phone calls, so he started the day with a jar in front of him containing 120 paper clips. Each time he made a phone call, he'd move one paper clip into the empty jar beside him. Visual measurements like this can come in many forms, such as food journals, workout logs, even the page numbers in a book. When I was rereading this book for today's podcast and last week's podcast, I was reading it on my Kindle, which shows the percentage of the book that's been completed. And so last week, I still had some of the book to read. I think I had 30%. And I thought, okay, 3 days, if I can do 10% each day, that's the book read for in time for this week's podcast. And that motivated me to keep going and getting it done. Also having the podcast release date being today made me think it must be done by Wednesday because I need the content in it to create the podcast. I also used this last year. I think it was last year. I did the 75 medium challenge. I think it was 15-minute meditation, journaling, 45-minute workout, 15,000 steps. There was 2 other things now I can't remember. I wasn't going to continue doing this afterwards, but I wanted to kind of kickstart my year last year. So I got a massive A3 page and I drew out the habits, and then I had all the dates beside it where I could fill in a tick for each one. And then next to that A3 page that was above my desk, I had 75 post-it stickers. So literally 1 to 75. And when I checked off the habits, I pulled off the post-it sticker from the wall. It was very satisfying. It was right in front of me and above my desk as well, so I could see it every day. And it served as a reminder to get it done. Jerry Seinfeld used a habit tracker to stick with his streak of writing jokes every single day. He wasn't focused on how good or bad a particular joke was or how inspired he felt. He was simply focused on showing up and adding to his streak. Habit tracking is powerful because it leverages multiple laws of human behaviour. It makes it obvious, attractive and satisfying. It creates a visual cue that reminds you to act. It is motivating because you see the progress you're making and you don't want to lose it. And it's satisfying whenever you record another successful instance of your habit. But remember, tracking isn't for everyone, and there's no need to measure your entire life. But nearly anyone can benefit from it in some form, even if it's only temporary. When I first started meditating and journaling, I tracked those habits until I felt like I didn't need to track them anymore, and they became part of my daily life, which was the goal. This kind of tracking should be limited to your most important habits, so it's better to consistently track one habit than to sporadically track 10. And it's inevitable that life will interrupt you at some point and break down your habits. Perfection is not possible. So when this happens, James says he tries to remind himself of a simple rule: never miss twice. So the problem isn't slipping up. The problem is thinking that if you can't do something perfectly, then you shouldn't do it at all. Last week, I felt really low. I was just, my period was on the way and I just felt a bit all over the place. And I didn't want to go to the gym. But Sarah was there again saying, come on, get up. You'll feel better afterwards. And I went, and I didn't do a very good workout, but I felt better just getting up, getting ready and going to the gym, even if it was only for 45 minutes and then coming back and relaxing. And that kind of day is just as important as your good workouts because it maintains the compound gains that you've accrued from previous good days. So doing something is better than doing nothing. I'm going to contradict him a wee bit in this because I feel like there are days where you have to notice when doing nothing is going to push you forward, because rest and recharge is just as important as always getting your habits ticked off. So I know that's kind of going against what he's saying, but I think there is beauty as well in creating a habit of doing nothing. It's something that I struggle with, that I'm trying to do more of in my weeks, because it allows me to just be completely still and recharge. Knowing when and when not to track a habit. So sometimes we focus on working long hours instead of doing meaningful work. We care more about getting 10,000 steps than we do about being healthy. We optimize for what we measure, but when we choose the wrong measurement, we get the wrong behavior. So these couple of lines really hit home for me, because I don't want to say I've been struggling, but I suppose I have been struggling a wee bit, just going through the motions and trying to ride the roller coaster that is starting your own business and helping it grow. I've been measuring my worth based on my revenue, and that's the wrong measurement. There is so much more than the amount of money that's coming in every month. There are so many people being impacted by what I'm putting out there that I can't even see. So I had to remind myself that the measurement of revenue is simply one piece of feedback in the overall system of being my own boss and growing my business. Accountability partners can change everything. I've really experienced this in the last couple of weeks, because I've told Sarah what my focus is at the gym and how many days I want to go. And whenever I'm sitting on the sofa with a big sad head on me and I say I really don't want to go, I'm so tired, I've had a busy day at work, she's like, get up, you're going to the gym, you had a sad day yesterday and that's enough, you'll feel better afterwards. And I need that sometimes. Sometimes I need like comfort and being like, it's okay to lie on the sofa, but other times I need, get the fuck up, we're going to the gym. James then moves on to speak about habit contracts, and an entrepreneur from Nashville put a strategy in place for his actions. This is kind of going the next step up, but it obviously worked for him. He laid out a roadmap. So phase 1 was get back to a strict slow carb diet in quarter 1. Phase 2, start a strict macro nutrition tracking and program in quarter 2. Phase 3, refine and maintain the details of his diet and workout program in quarter 3. So if he fails to do these 3 items, he will have to dress up each workday and Sunday morning for the rest of the quarter. He also has to give his trainer $200 to use as he sees fit if he misses one day of logging his food. And at the bottom of the page, he, his wife, and his trainer all sign the contract. I haven't gone this far with my habits before, but it's something I'd probably be open to trying. With my posting every single day, I've openly said it in the social circle, which is the social media growth community that I'm part of. And I've also said it out loud on my social media. So it's been easier to follow through on that. I'm not going to say easy. It's been easier. There was a time when I would have said to myself, if I could just get 1 post out per week. Now I'm sometimes getting 2 posts per day. If I'm doing the 90-day walking and talking challenge and my regular post. A big part of that has been me openly coming out and saying it to that community and on my page. He then moves on to talk about the secret to maximising your odds of success, and it's to choose the right field of competition. So habits are easier to perform and more satisfying to stick with when they align with your natural inclinations and abilities. So for example, if you want to dunk a basketball, being 7 foot tall is very useful. If you want to perform gymnastics, being 7 foot tall could be a great hindrance. This is also true for mental characteristics. So James Clear says that he's smart if you ask him about habits and human behaviour, but not so much when it comes to knitting or guitar chords. Competence is highly dependent on context. An obvious question to that would be, how do I identify the opportunities and habits that are right for me? The first place to look for an answer is by understanding your personality. The most proven scientific analysis of personality traits is known as the Big Five, which breaks them down into 5 spectrums of behaviour. Number 1, openness to experience. So from curious and inventive on the one end to cautious and consistent on the other. Number 2, conscientious, organised and efficient to easygoing and spontaneous. Number 3, extroversion, outgoing and energetic to solitary and reserved. So you likely know them as extrovert and introvert. Number 4 is agreeableness, friendly and compassionate to challenging and detached. I'm not going to pronounce this one. I've tried to listen to YouTube on it. But number 5 is neuroticism, and anxious and sensitive to calm and stable. All 5 characteristics have biological underpinnings. So extroversion, for instance, can be tracked from birth. If scientists played a loud noise in a nursery, some babies turned toward it while others turned away. And researchers tracked these children through life, and they found that the babies who turned toward the sound were more likely to grow up to be extroverts. So our habits are not solely determined by our personalities, but there is no doubt that our genes nudge us in a certain direction. So you have to work with them to build habits that work for your personality. As you explore different options, there's a few questions you can ask yourself to narrow down the habits and areas that feel most satisfying to you. Number 1, what feels like fun to me but work for others? Number 2, what makes me lose track of time? Flow is the mental state you enter when you're so focused on the task at hand that the rest of the world fades away. Number 3, where do I get greater returns than the average person? And number 4, what comes naturally to me? He then moves on to talk about the Goldilocks rule, how to stay motivated in life and work. And the best way to maintain motivation and achieve peak levels of desire is to work on tasks of just manageable difficulty. The brain loves a challenge, but only if it is within an optimal zone of difficulty. When I'm working with my one-on-one coaching clients, what usually happens is we naturally figure out action steps as we move through our calls. And at the end of the call, whenever they have their actions in front of them, I'll always ask, does this feel doable this week? Because if it's completely out of reach, we won't follow through with it. And the Goldilocks rule states the human experience is at peak motivation when working on tasks that are right on the edge of their current abilities. Not too hard, not too easy, just right. A flow state is the experience of being in the zone and fully immersed in an activity. James asked an elite coach what the really successful people do most that most don't. He did mention factors like genetics, luck, talent, but he also said that at some point it comes down to who can handle the boredom of training every day, doing the same lifts over and over again. When we lose focus or motivation because we think successful people have some bottomless reserve of passion, the coach was saying that really successful people feel the same lack of motivation as everyone else. The difference is that they still find a way to show up despite the feelings of boredom. As our habits become ordinary, we start derailing our progress to seek novelty. No habit stays interesting forever. At some point, everyone faces the same challenge on the journey of self-improvement. You have to fall in love with boredom. I find this with the habit that I've been posting every day. I had a wall when the 6-month challenge of posting every weekday was coming to an end. So I asked myself, how could I kind of increase my drive again? And that's when I introduced the 90-day walking and talking series. I did what I could do to find a way to continue to put the reps of posting every day in. So the downside of creating good habits is that when the habit becomes automatic, you become less sensitive to feedback. So it's easier to let mistakes slide. When you do it well enough on autopilot, you stop thinking about how to do it better. And when this happens, what you need is a combination of atomic habits and deliberate practice. Each habit unlocks the next level of performance, but it's an endless cycle. Reflection and review enable the long-term improvement of all habits because it makes you aware of your mistakes and helps you consider possible paths for improvement. At the end of the year or at the end of each month, you can ask yourself 3 questions. What went well this year or month? What didn't go so well this year or month? What did I learn? James concludes the book by saying, can one tiny change transform your life? It's unlikely you would say so, but what if you made another and another and another? And at some point, you will have to admit that your life was transformed by one small change. As a reminder, behaviours are effortless when they're obvious, attractive, easy and satisfying. And they are difficult when they're invisible, unattractive, hard and unsatisfying. Small habits don't just add up, they compound. I have loved rereading this book because I find that when you read a book for the second time at a different stage of your life, you take something completely different from it. And I'm really happy that I've taken the time to do this, create the notes and create these podcast episodes. In these last 2 episodes about habits, I think there is so much you can take and run with right now as you finish listening and start creating small changes in your life. Remember, it's not about doing a life overhaul. It's about starting really small and building and watching things compound because that takes the pressure off us when we try and do too much. When we feel too much pressure, we feel like, fuck it, let's just forget about it and go back to what we're comfortable doing. Always start small and build from there. Before I close off the episode, I just want to say again that you've probably heard me tell the story, but my starting small started with meditating, and then that led to journaling, which then led to realising that I had a terrible relationship with alcohol and I needed to remove it. Things snowballed from there, and I wouldn't be where I am if I didn't start small, and I won't be where I'm going to be in the next 4 or 5 years if I don't continue reflecting and improving. And as he says in the book, it's a never-ending cycle. But I would rather be on a never-ending cycle of improvement instead of a never-ending cycle of deteriorating. I don't really know what next week's episode is going to be on. I have some ideas, but come back to find out. It'll be episode 9. It'll be something good. It'll be an improvement from this week's. Have a lovely day wherever you are, and I will see you then. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate you taking the time. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow, leave a review, or share it with someone who might need it. It really helps the podcast grow. And until next week, stay mellow.